In retaliation for the death of 30 bus riders, Israel invades South Lebanon and occupy a 6-mile strip of land north of their border, from where they launch indiscriminate cluster-bomb attacks, killing over 1,500. Israel only ends their illegal occupation when President Carter threatened to cut off aid because the weapons Israel were using were subject to an agreement that they were only to be used in defense of Israel. This invasion had been planned by Israel 2 years before, which questions whether the so-called terrorist attack on the bus was an Israeli false flag operation. The invasion is to seize control of the Litani River, which amazingly Israel was allowed access to by the United Nations Security Force after the Israelis left southern Lebanon. So the war is in essence to steal Lebanon's water supply. 1982 future Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, orchestrates Israel's invasion of Lebanon and Beirut. At least 18,000 Lebanese and Palestinian civilians are killed. Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin arrogantly states of this massacre, "We do not answer to the world, only to ourselves." 1987 Edmund de Rothschild creates the World Conservation Bank, which is designed to transfer debt from third world nations to this bank in exchange for land these nations can give to the bank. This I designed so the Rothschilds can control the third world, which is 30% of Earth. 1989, in the former concentration camp of Auschwitz, a plaque claiming that 4 million people had been murdered was replaced with a plaque stating that 1.5 million had died there. No reason is given for this reduction.
Within the legislative body of a nation which claims to be a democracy, if its elected public servants seek to place the interests of another nation ahead of the interests of the citizens who elected them, in times of conflict, this could amount to treason. For as Marcus Cicero warned, a nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. It cannot be said too often or too loudly, the interests of a nation's own citizens must come first. So what is this all about?
I would like to first of all thank you for establishing the Friends of Israel in Western Australia. Organizations like yours are especially crucial at this time when our enemies are attempting to delegitimize our basic rights to exist and threatening to destroy us as well as the rest of Western civilizations.
Goodness gracious, when I thought it was Israel that was trying to destroy the Palestinians while attempting to make the rest of us go along with their outrageous behavior.
We left Rafah and headed northeast along the rubble and debris-strewn roads towards an area called Khazar.
They came straight in here, and these are the tank tracks. When they arrived here, they got first to a village called Al-Najah. This is it, and this is what they did.
More than 20 people died here, including a woman, locals told me, shot dead while waving a white flag. Zaytun, a few miles north, also flattened by Israeli bulldozers. But in this house, they'd herded 100 members of the Samuni clan, and then they shelled it, killing 49 of them.
Jonathan Miller's moving report is noteworthy because the truth about Israel's actions against the Palestinians is so rarely told, and told so well. How could anyone seeing it want to be a friend of Israel? Now compare that report with this summing up of Israel's murderous attack on the Mavi Marmara.
At the end of the day, the bid to break the naval blockade wasn't really about bringing aid to Gaza. It was a political move designed to put pressure on Israel and the international community.
Talking of pressure, one cannot help but wonder if Jane Corbyn's husband, John Craddock Maples, former Member of Parliament, President of Conservative Friends of Israel, brought any pressure to bear on how his wife approached the making of this publicly funded yet appallingly unbalanced BBC documentary. Recently, political pressure has been brought to bear against a trade unionist for attempting to express his views about the events of 9/11 on Australia's publicly funded broadcaster, the ABC. Josh Frydenberg, Australia's first ever Jewish Liberal Member of Parliament, had this to say.
I refer to the comments of Kevin Bracken, President of the Victorian Trades Hall Council and member of the Port Melbourne branch of the Labor Party. That, in relation to the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Centre on September the 11th, 2001, and I quote, "I believe the official story is a conspiracy theory that doesn't stand up to scientific scrutiny." If the Prime Minister finds these comments as offensive as most right-thinking Australians, what action will the Prime Minister take to discipline Mr Bracken and send a message to others that such remarks are unacceptable?
They may have been unacceptable to him, but 3/4 of the Australians who responded to a poll following the broadcast found Kevin Bracken's statement reasonable. But of course, they may not have been right-thinking Australians. That is, Australians who think the same way as Josh Frydenberg and John Fain. For it was John Fain who started this particular censorship ball rolling.
Which version of the conspiracy theories do you subscribe to for the alternative?
Well,
Are you saying that the Israelis engineered it, or do you believe that there's the Bilderberg group, or which version of the Nutter conspiracies is the one you subscribe to?
It is clear that John Fain is well aware of the widespread suspicions about Israel's involvement in 9/11, and this typical excerpt from his vitriolic attack on Kevin Bracken demonstrates that he is determined that a new investigation should not be launched.
I'm the President of the Victorian Trades Hall Council, and we've taken resolutions from both.
I think it reflects very poorly on your members, Kevin, that you have views that are so ridiculous, so extreme and so unacceptable, because this is the lunatic fringe, this is the extreme right.
And on he went, and his views seem to be shared by Australia's Prime Minister.
Obviously, I don't agree with the remarks. Obviously, they are stupid and wrong. I think the member was in the House yesterday when I gave my Prime Minister's statement on Afghanistan. I would refer him to that. That is my view, obviously.
And on she went, which pleased the Honourable Member for Kooyong, the Friends of Israel, and Tel Aviv, no doubt. But how many right-thinking Australians will it please? Certainly not those who noticed that she gave no reasons for calling Kevin Bracken's opinions stupid and wrong. She just echoed John Fain's dismissal of them, only a matter of hours after they were first broadcast. But had she asked, her staff may have discovered that NIST has been suppressing a video during which an explosion can be clearly heard just before WTC-7 collapses into its own footprint. Listen carefully. Obviously, a video crew were waiting for something to happen and can be heard chatting, which is why they didn't...
I think that played twice.
They also fix the world price of gold on a daily basis and profit from its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the Rothschilds have amassed trillions of dollars worth of gold bullion in their subterranean vaults and have cornered the world's gold supply. They own controlling interest in the world's largest oil company, Royal Dutch Shell. They operate phony charities and offshore banking services where the wealth of the black nobility in the Vatican is hidden in secret accounts at Rothschild Swiss banks, trusts, and holding companies. Although Evelyn Rothschild looks like a harmless gray-haired old man, make no mistake about it, Rothschild and his ancestors have handpicked presidents, crashed stock markets, bankrupted nations, orchestrated wars, and sponsored the mass murder and impoverishment of millions. The wealth hoarded by this one family alone could feed, clothe, and shelter every human being on Earth.
1945, the tribunals held at the end of the Second World War to investigate Nazi war crimes, censor any materials recording Western assistance to Hitler, such as that of Prescott Bush. The Rothschilds take giant steps towards their goal of world government. The Second League of Nations, which is called the United Nations, is approved this year. 1948 at midnight, May the 14th, the State of Israel is officially proclaimed. In Tel Aviv, the flag of Israel contains a hexagram which represents Saturn, which is an esoteric name for Satan. 1950, every nation involved in World War II has their debt greatly multiplied. United States debt went from $43 billion to $257 billion, a 598% increase. James Warburg arrogantly states before the Senate we shall have world government. Whether or not we like it, the only question is whether world government is achieved by conquest of consent. 1951, on April Fool's Day, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Agency, the Mossad, which will go on to terrorize the world, is formed. Their motto is, by way of deception thou shalt do war. 1963, on June 4th, President Kennedy signs Executive Order 11,110, which returns to the United States government the powers to issue currency without going through the Rothschild and Federal Reserve. Less than 6 months later, JFK is assassinated by the Rothschilds for the same reason as Abraham Lincoln in 1865. He wanted to print American money for American people, as opposed to the benefit of the Jewish banking elite.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, for I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmen